Again, welcome to the Global HR Forum. This session will talk about the retirement extension and the jobs for middle to old ages. It will be a very interesting topic for many people. Sooner or later, everyone will reach retirement and think about what the person is going to do. By the statistics, we have, as everybody knows, we are increasing the senior population of the elders, and it's increasing very rapidly, and we need to do something for them to continue some of the work and utilize their expertise. Today we have speakers from Germany and also from Japan. Dr. Robert Helmrich, a little bit difficult to pronounce, but he has been working in this area very long, and now he's the head of the division in the German Federal Institute for Vocational Education and Training, called the BIBB. And Professor Fukuhara, from his teaching in Osaka City University and also other universities in the Kansai area. He's also expert in the labor economics and the welfare policy area. We have two discussants. Dr. Namchul is also an expert in Korea in this area. He's the Director General in the Korea Research Institute for Vocational Education and Training, we call KRIVET. And also Dr. Philip Martin is a professor at UC Davis, also expert in this area in the US. So we'll listen to the interesting story from Germany and Japan, how they're handling this issue in their countries, and at the same time we'll discuss with the Korea case and also US case. And next is Dr. Fukuhara from Osaka University.
Hello everyone. I present the extension of the retirement age and the current employment condition of middle old age persons in Japan. Today, in Japan and Korea, aging is, excuse me, sorry. Today, in Japan and Korea, rapidly aging today, the issue of the middle old aged persons is becoming increasingly important. It's in the same way. Therefore, as a reference case of the consider the issue in Korea, I'd like to present the Japanese experience. I will first discuss about the process of the extension of the retirement age from the 1960s, and in the 2000s, it's called the measure to secure employment for the aged. Secondly, I take up the measure to support of the re-employment of middle-aged persons. It's called the promotion of the employment of middle-old aged persons. But these two measures are related to Japanese employment system. That is, in other words, it's called the membership-based employment system. That is, the issue of the middle-old aged persons might have led to encourage the reform of this employment system. So I want to look back look back elderly support measures after 1980s. From the 1980s, the government starts the expansion of retirement from the age of 55 to 60s. At the same time, another policy was implemented to promote the re-employment of unemployed older than 45, because this age category has been the main target of layoff during the recession. For example, in the early 1960s and in the late 1970s, after the oil crisis. And in addition to this layoff, although the economy, Japanese economy was rapidly growing in 1960s, getting a job for those older than 45 was definitely not easy. Under these conditions, the government has started to promoting the employment of middle-aged persons. In 1966, the national government and the local government bodies introduced the system on employment rate for the middle-aged persons. And in 1971, government introduced the employment rate of unemployed middle-aged person. In particular, this is important in particular job field to support job research of employment middle-aged persons. Employment older than 45 were no longer in reach of the internal labor market that will fund of the membership-based employment system of continuous employment as permanent employee and seniority-based wage. But funds themselves have dropped into an external labor market of unstable employment. At the same time, measures to increasing the retirement age of 55 from 55 to 80s were implemented because many companies were continuously employed their workers older than 55. In these conditions, in 1973, the retirement expansion has started by using the provision of grants to small middle-scale companies. And in 1976, companies were requested to increase the number of the middle-aged workers over the age of 55 to more than 6% of the total staff. Eventually, the system of the employment rate was part of the extension the retirement age. A compelling phase was that in order to tackling aging-based discrimination, the companies that did not reach the 6% were no longer eligible to post their job advertisement in public job centers. Around the end of the 1970s, against the background to the oil crisis, numerous companies had transferred their middle-aged workers or cut down on their members. To this, the government had installed support measures such as grant and benefit for employed old-aged workers, and benefits for the creation of employment for middle-aged workers. That marked the change in government employment promotion plan to support aged workers had switched from providing support differently to the aged persons to promote support to the companies. It means the change of the character that the employment rate from from the promotion to the re-employment to the one of the retirement age extension measures. This happened in the context of economic comparing power to which Japan, with its membership-based employment system, had reached. That upper hand over the West, which led to the optimistic view that Japan could secure employment for its middle-aged workforce and its particular economic growth and employment system of Japan. Anywhere by 1985, more than 50% of the companies had set their retirement standard on them, on 60s. From this condition, in 1986, the government had required the age of 60 retirement system to companies. And in 1994, the government established the age of the 60 in retirement system. After established age of 60 retirement system, steps were taken to continuously employed worker to the age to 65. This happened in the context of prolonged living expectancy, but it should also in connection to the aging of baby boom generation, which posed a new challenge to Japanese public pension fund from 2007 onward. And in 2000, the amendment of the law for the stabilization of employment of the aged requires the following measure as a requirement to secure employment the middle old aged. Three options. One, continuous employment to the age to 65. Two, retirement from the age of 85. Three, the abolition of the retirement system. In the amendment of, in the amendment of 2004, this measure became obligatory, were implemented in April 2006. However, during this stage, the stipulation of the labor management agreement were included and interim measures of the selection were allowed. These were abolished during the amendment of 2012 and brought into force in April 2030. Now, companies are obliged to secure employment of all applicants under the age of 65. Furthermore, this was carried forward at the time that the baby boom generation was started to retire from work. It is most likely that during the process of raising of pension age of 65 by 2025, renewed effort will be paid to increase the age over 65 or abolition the retirement system. Reflecting the realization process of the measure of securement of employment for middle-old age persons, one can notice that first, general conditions were created to secure employment of those aged under 65 by introducing the benefit system and using other systems instead of merely increase the retirement age. In that way, after the middle of the 1990s, government policy agenda haven't included the promotion of the employment of the unemployment middle-aged aged persons. There are three options in the measure of securement of employment for middle-old aged persons. Which option is favored by companies? One, abolition of the set retirement. It's okay. Second, two, raising retirement to the age of 65. Three, retirement between the age of 16 and 64, and continuous employment after retirement to 65. The response summarized in this figure 1. There was almost no change regarding the abolition of the set retirement, with ratio response being 1.9 here, and 1 point after 1.2 is same, and raising retirement to the age of 60 is almost 10%, and many companies select this case, continuous employment after retirement. As a result, there are not that many companies that have increased the retirement age to 65 after 2030. They mostly opt for continuous employment during the period between 2012 and 2013. The background of the implementation of the employment securement for all applications under 65 could be related with the fact that companies being able to support the wage by including baby boom generation workers who are older than 16. When companies would have to secure the employment for all applicants, it would pose extra wage risk and amidst the difficulty of secure employment. More companies may become more passive to this option. So, what is the specific content of the option for continuous employment to 65? Let's have the closely look at it from the 2014 GLPT. It's an organization of the research of labor problem. The employment status of continuous employment contain mostly permanent employment in one's own companies, 35.22%, other type employee in one's own companies, exactly non-regular workers, contract, part-time, etc. It's 54.7%. And the duration of the employment contract contain mostly year bias, 79.5%. And and the content of the work is the same work as before retirement. It's most many 73.8%. And 93.7% is employed in the department, same as before retirement, and 95.5% work in the same working place at the time retirement. The amount of the working day, work full-time, it's many, 86.4%. This response, this response related to the wage cost and the employment system of in Japan. This response on measures taken by companies revising of wage system. It's 11.3%, and the revision of the requirement plan of new graduate, 2.3%. This result shows that the response to the aged employees is much related to the wage cost. On the other hand, we can notice tendency to reverse of the original seniority wage system and the effect to the employment of young people, especially the effect on the wage is substantial. Conclusion. Now that many Western countries are abolishing their retirement system, one can say that it will be difficult to uphold retirement expansion over the age of 65 in Japan. There is a condition for extension of the retirement age to 65. It is a response to wage cost, but it will be ultimately changed in the near future. This could also connect to revision of the membership-based employment system into job-based employment system based on occupational qualification. And in the 1960s, there was a strong intention to this in the promotion of employment to the middle-aged exactly person unemployment. Now, another problem of non-permanent employment, not just of young person, but also person in their 40s. They are facing long-term unstable employment. The government has recently started to look into the situation of the external labor market, because the discussion is not merely on the labor conditions such as minimum wage, but also on occupational qualification and publicity fund training program. The concept of job-based employment system might take further root. A conclusion, to realize the retirement extension and the employment stability of middle-old age workers, we have to find a way to combine successfully two systems, that is the job-based employment system and the membership-based employment system. It's a big problem in Japan. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Fukuhara. Japan's experience will be a good reference for our policy in Korea. Next, we'll invite the discussant to Dr. Lee.
오늘 이 세션의 그 자장을 맡아주신 우리 윤경로 원장님, 주제 발표를 해주신 BIBB 로베르트 헬림리 박사님, 또 오사카 시립대학의 후쿠하라 히로유키 교수님께 깊은 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 오늘 이 세션에서 저희는 독일과 일본의 사례를 통해서 한국에 주는 시사점을 이렇게 얻을 수 있다라는 생각을 가집니다. 저는 두 분의 발표에 대해서 특별한 그 이의를 제기하지 않고 대부분 동의하면서 한국의 경우를 좀 말씀을 드리도록 하겠습니다. 이 세션에서 그러다 보니까 독일, 일본, 한국, 미국의 청장년층의 그 일자리 상생 문제가 논의가 될 거로 이렇게 생각이 듭니다. 처음에 이제 제가 제시한 표는 최근에 우리 그 국책연구기관에서 발표한 갈등의 유형을 제시한 것입니다. 이제 제 상단에 보시면 이제 제일 큰 부분이 청년들과 장년층. 제가 이렇게 보니까 이 자리에도 청년들과 장년, 중장년이 거의 비슷한 비율로 이렇게 참석하신 것 같습니다. 그래서 이 표에서 보시듯이 우리 대한민국, 한국의 경우는 제일 큰 그 계층 간의 갈등이 크다고 합니다. 이 갈등의 경우에서 두 번째가 이제 그 노사 갈등, 그다음에 우리가 이제 오늘 논의하는 세대 간의 갈등, 청년과 장년의 세대 갈등. 저기에서 이제 포인트가 높은 것은 갈등의 소지가 높다 이렇게 보시면 되겠습니다. 그래서 우리가 오늘 논의하는 이 세대 간의 갈등도 한국에서는 큰 문제다 이렇게 말씀을 좀 드릴 수 있겠습니다. 그래서 이제 그 오늘 주제와 관계되는 그 갈등, 청장년의 그 갈등의 주요 원인으로 이제 처음에 보시면 이제 그 우리가 이제 지금 사회를 뭐 고령화 사회다 이렇게 말씀을 하시는데 가장 큰 원인이 고령화로 인한 그 노인 인구 대비 생산 인구가 감소한다. 다시 말씀드리면 노인 양반은 늘고 젊은 사람들은 줄어든다. 저출산 고령화 이렇게 우리가 얘기를 합니다. 또 한 가지는 이 고령자들이 많다 보니까 고령자 복지에 많은 비용이 이제 그 증가로 인해서 그 정부에서 많은 재정 부담을 갖는다. 이렇게 이러한 요인이 이제 중요한 요인이다 이렇게 말씀을 좀 드리겠습니다. 그러면 요 그 슬라이드는 일자리 관련 그 세대 갈등의 핵심 원인을 좀 말씀을 드린 것입니다. 우리 여기에 그 젊은 청년들도 있고 장년, 중장년층도 계시지만 가장 큰 문제가 정규직과 비정규직의 문제다라는 것을 얘기할 수 있겠습니다. 그래서 청년과 중장년층의 그 일자리 양극화 문제를 우리가 얘기할 수 있다라는 것입니다. 그 이런 일자리 문제가 그 양극화에 있어서는 그 양적인 측면보다는 또 질적인 측면을 우리가 그 큰 문제라 이렇게 생각이 듭니다. 다시 말씀드리면 그 질적인 문제에서 그 여기에 계시는 그 청년층이나 중장년층에 계신 분들이 본인들이 피부로 느낄 내용이지만 정규직의 대부분은 중장년층이 이렇게 그 가지고 있고 우리 젊은 청년들은 임시직으로 비정규직으로 이렇게 근무를 하고 있는 이런 이 등식이 성립된다. 많은 사람들이 이야기하는 것입니다. 이런 것들을 우리가 일자리 관련 세대 간의 그 갈등의 핵심적인 원인이라고 이렇게 말씀을 드리겠습니다. 그다음에 이제 일자리 관련해서 이제 우리가 이 고통의 분포를 이렇게 이야기할 수 있습니다. 고통의 분포라면 우리가 U자형이다라고 이렇게 말씀을 이야기를 하고 있는데 일자리에서 이제 가장 큰 부분이 이제 U자라고 그러면 제일 왼쪽이 이제 연령별로면 제일 젊은 사람들을 이렇게 얘기하면 청년층이 일자리에 진입하는 데 있어서 가장 고통이 크다는 것입니다. 여기 젊은 청년들도 많이 계시지만 이 문제의 고민이 상당히 많을 걸로 생각이 듭니다. 다행인지 그래도 중장년층의 경우는 그 청년층보다는 양호하다 이렇게 얘기를 하고 있습니다. 그래서 그 세대 간의 그 말씀을 좀 드리고 특히 이제 문제가 되는 것 노년선이다. 그 before the old age다. 우리 한국말로 노전 한자로인데 노전에는 일자리 진입 장벽과 퇴출 고통의 최고점을 다루는데 여기에 저도 그 2, 3년 있으면 정년 퇴직해야 되는데 이 문제 고민을 많이 하고 있는 부분입니다. 뭐 지금뿐 아니라 몇 년 전부터 정년 퇴직하면 뭐 할까 이런 고민을 계속 하고 있는 입장입니다. 다음은 이제 그 우리가 이러면 이제 청년층과 중장년층이 이제 갈등이 있는데 갈등의 문제를 이제 여러 가지 얘기를 하고 있는데 우리 아까 OECD에 계신 이코노미스트 저쪽 계시다 가셨는데 OECD에서는 우리가 이 청년층과 장년층의 그 고용 관계는 이 보완제라고 이렇게 이 대체제가 아니라 이제 보완제다 이렇게 얘기를 하고 있습니다. 그래서 이제 대체제라고 이렇게 얘기하면 큰 문제가 되지만 그래도 국제기구인 OECD에서 대체제라고 하지 않고 이제 보완제라고 이렇게 하는 것은 이 마지막에 제가 말씀을 드릴 부분이 좀 있는 것 같습니다. 그래서 이런 이 우리가 그 청년층과 중고령층이 보완제다고 이렇게 얘기할 수 있는 부분은 우리가 두 부류의 사람들이 그 일자리 업종별로 선호하는 이 선호도가 이렇게 다르다라고 이렇게 얘기를 할 수 있겠다는 것입니다. 예를 들면 청년들은 대부분 이제 금융이나 보험, 전문 과학기술, 영상, 방송통신 이런 분야에 많은 관심을 가지고 있고 또 중장년층은 아무래도 농업이나 제조, 건설, 운수업 분야에 이렇게 선호도가 크다 이렇게 그 많은 연구에서 이렇게 제시되고 있습니다. 제가 이 연구를 한 게 아니고 많은 그 이 분야에 연구하는 분들이 이런 그 안을 제시하고 있습니다. 그래서 이렇게 그 갈등이 이제 보완제의 체제에 있어서 그 세대 간의 갈등이 있다면 우리 세대 간에 뭐 저희가 얘기하는 이제 일자리 분업화 뭐 쉽지는 않지만 일자리 분업화도 이제 생각을 할 필요가 있다라는 그런 생각을 하면서 이 갈등을 어떻게 해결할 수 있을까 이런 부분에 한번 좀 생각을 해보면 저는 무엇보다도 이 근본적으로 이렇게 이 대한민국 정부에서 청년과 장년들의 일자리 부분에 대해서 많은 연구도 하고 뭐 정책도 제시하고 저희 같은 직업능력개발의 국제기관에서 이런 연구를 많이 하고 있지만 제 생각에는 가장 중요한 부분은 이렇게 그 청년과 장년들이 세대 간의 그 일자리에 대해서 어떻게 인식을 하고 있는지 이런 그 경험적인 그 자료 같은 걸 잘 분석해서 확인할 필요가 있다라는 생각을 가집니다. 그래서 이제 저희가 이제 그 해결 방안으로 이제 그 여러 가지 이제 뭐 정책을 제시할 수 있겠지만 첫 번째로 그 우리가 잘 알고 있듯이 대한민국이 전 세계에서 출산율이 가장 적습니다. 그 젊은 사람들이 결혼도 안 하지만 더불어 그 아기를 낳지 않습니다. 그래서 이런 이 저출산으로 인해서 그 노동력을 이런 이제 노동력이 계속 감소하는데 이런 노동력 부족을 메우기 위해서는 청년들이 이제 노동 시장에 진입이 빨라야 되는데 잘 아시겠지만 여기 대학생들도 이제 많이 계신 것 같지만 대학교를 군대 말고도 4년에 졸업하는 사람이 거의 없는 것 같습니다. 저도 대학에 강의도 해보고 그러지만 4년, 5년 어떤 때는 7학년까지 듣고 이렇게. 그래서 이렇게 학교가 늦어지다 보니까 노동시장 진입이 이렇게 늦어지는 부분 또 이런 부분이 이제 이런 부분하고 또 정부에서 지금 그 장년들에게는 이제 정년 연장 문제 이런 부분이 그 해결 방안으로 이제 한번 얘기할 수 있고 그다음에 이제 두 번째의 경우는 그 대상별로 청년과 장년 이 두 부류에 대해서 이 맞춤형 취업 지원을 강화해야 된다 이렇게 그 말씀을 좀 드리겠습니다. 그래서 청년들에게 요새 그 현 정부에서 많이 이야기하는 능력 중심 사회 그래서 스펙을 초월한 채용 시스템을 해야 되겠다. 대기업에서도 그렇고 공공기관에서도 이런 그 부분에 대해서 많은 이 정책이 변화가 되고 있는 걸로 알고 있습니다. 이런 이 맞춤형 취업 지원 또 이 스펙 초월 채용 또 정부에서는 이러한 그 일자리 매칭에 관한 그 정책적 연구 이런 부분도 이제 필요하다라고 이렇게 좀 말씀을 드리겠습니다. 그다음에 이제 미들에이지 중장년층에게는 이제 오랫동안 사회생활, 직장생활을 하면서 쌓아온 그 노하우를 가지고 이분들이 그 전직 지원 같은 것들을 강화를 해야 되겠다. 많은 그 노하우를 잘 활용하기 위해서. 그래서 이제 최근에 이제 우리 정부에서 그 중장년층을 위해서 임금 피크제라든가 뭐 임금 체제 개선, 인사관리 체제 이런 것들로 이제 많이 바꾸고 있습니다. 이런 부분도 필요하고 특히 이제 우리나라의 경우는 이러한 일들이 노사 문제가 중요한 이슈가 되니까 이런 청년과 장년의 일자리 문제에 있어서 또 중요한 역할을 하는 이 매개체 역할을 할 수 있는 부분이 노동조합의 역할이라는 생각이 들고 그래서 노사 간의 협조가 이렇게 잘 돼야 되겠다라는 생각을 합니다. 그다음에 마지막으로 사실 이렇게 우리 인간 생활에서 사회생활 하면서 우리 학생들 공부하면서 서로 야 우리 같이 공부하자 말로는 상생을 한다 뭐 사회생활에 직장생활도 같이 도우면서 살자 상생이라는 말이 말로는 쉽게 하지만 이게 남을 앞서야 되기 때문에 상생이라는 게 상당히 어려운 현실입니다. 그렇지만 이 그 장년층과 청년층의 그 일자리 그 세대 간의 그 갈등을 최소화하기 위해서는 저는 가장 중요한 부분이 뭐 서로 간의 이 세대 간 아까 그 인식의 그 조사도 해야 된다고 생각하지만 이 세대 간의 그 상생 프로그램이 무엇인지 요게 그 연구뿐 아니라 우리 각자 청년들은 청년들대로 장년층은 장년층대로 그것에 대해서 깊은 고민이 있어야 된다는 생각을 하면서 오늘 토론을 마치겠습니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. It was very easy to listen and understand. The next discussant, we have Dr. Philip Martin from US. He's a professor at the UC Davis, and he was in the meeting early this week, and he was very impressed with Koreans starting meeting at 7 a.m.
Yes, I'm Phil Martin, the University of California, Davis. I thank you all for being here. And I'm very impressed that in Korea, a professional meeting can start so early in the morning, and people are eager to be there and to listen. We've had a rich discussion, and let me summarize to say that the average age of the labor force in the rich countries and in the poor countries, for that matter, is going to increase. And the size of the labor force will either grow slower or it will shrink. So therefore, even if you're young, message one, if you're young, you should have an easy time getting a job because the labor force is shrinking. Now, it's the sort of thing that you might have to have those children that Mr. Lee mentioned because they may have it easier. All of our projections say that the labor force growing slower or shrinking and aging means it should be easier to get jobs. I happen to work at a university, and I can tell you it's actually harder to get jobs now than it was 10 or 15 years ago. So if you trust the experts, it should be easy, and if not for you, for your children. The second thing to take away from this, I think, is an old line that we used to use in Washington. There are no solutions. There are only trade-offs. And believe me, we teach in economics about a trade-off. If you have a choice between a good and a bad, pick the good. It takes no education. What takes education is if you have two goods, which of the two goods do you pick? So we want to make it easy for young people to get into the labor force. But we also want to keep the skills of our older workers. How do we balance between encouraging those older workers and their accumulated skills to leave, and at the same time, make it easier for young people to get jobs, to start out in careers? That's a hard thing to do. Let me just run through a couple of notes here that highlight the main thing that drives this kind of discussion. The median age of the world's population, so half of the people are younger and half are older, has been rising. Back in 1950, when the world was a much smaller place, the median age was 24. Today, the median age in the world is 29. But of course, median age in the world, that's kind of meaningless because it varies enormously by country. In sub-Saharan Africa, the median age is 15. Women are still having 6 children in Uganda and places like that. In Japan, it's 45. So there's a huge difference in median ages across countries. The second thing that's happening, of course, is rapid urbanization. People are moving into cities. Agriculture is still the world's #1 employer, but more than half of the world's people now live in cities, and that's going to increase. I'm going to show you a few slides that one of my ex-students put together where you can see, where McKinsey has tried to come out with a report that says two things about countries are going to affect the labor force and how people get into the labor force and jobs. One is, what's the median age of the population? And second is, what's the average years of schooling? And the answer that the prediction they come up with is, in all countries, richer and poor, by 2030, so this is not too far out, there will be shortages of skilled workers and surpluses of low-skilled workers. And the question then is going to be, to fill what they predict will be a skill gap, how do we keep older workers in the labor force, but at the same time, make it easier for young people to get jobs? So median age of the workforce, darker is older, and you can see that back in 1950, there were very few countries, well, none had a median age over 45. Today, we've got Japan, a few countries in Western Europe, in which the median age is approaching 45. The lighter the color, the younger, and you can see in sub-Saharan Africa, there are countries in which the half of the population is under the age of 15. Now, if you look at the median age by country, you'll notice Japan over there at 45, sub-Saharan Africa at 15, the United States somewhere in the middle at 36. But in all countries, that median age is creeping up. It's creeping up much slower in some of those African countries. It's creeping up faster in countries like Korea and Japan and Southern Europe, where birth rates are very low. The second big thing that affects older workers and labor forces is urbanization. So the big story is people moving out of agriculture, moving into cities. There's going to be a creation of big cities in places like China and India and many African countries. That's going to change people's expectations, and it's going to bring about new ways in which people interact with each other. Keep in mind that agriculture is still the world's #1 employer. Almost a third of the world's people are employed in agriculture. And remember, who leaves, who moves? It's young people. Young people move out of agriculture because they're the ones who perceive there's not going to be a future doing things the way their parents do. And if you want to look ahead, we've just heard about Germany. Population is projected to shrink. If you look at Lagos, which is the way it looks, I mean, you get this idea. There's going to be incredibly crowded cities in developing countries, and there might be empty apartments in some of the big cities of richer countries. Now, migration is one part of filling skills gaps. We have about 232 million migrants in the world. A migrant, according to the United Nations, is somebody who's 1 year outside their country of birth. And it doesn't matter why you're there, what your legal status is, 1 year and you're considered an international migrant. The United States has about 20% of the world's migrants. Russia is #2, Germany's #3. But generally speaking, people move from poorer to richer countries. And who moves? It's young people. Young people between roughly 18 and 30 are by far the most likely to move. Now, if we are trying to think about skill shortages and young and old people and how to deal with conflicts between generations, we have 200 countries in the world, but many of them are very small. 70 countries have about 80% of the world's people and workers. And what this graph does is on the X or horizontal axis, we've got the median age of the population. And on the y-axis, we have the average educational level. And what you can see is an aging advanced country is something like Germany, in which the average age, or Japan, the average age is old, but the average level of education is quite high. China, of course, is younger, it's rapidly aging, and it's got a lower educational level. And a young developing country would be one of those African countries in which the median age is much lower, but so is the level of education. If you want to look at individual countries, the arrow in the middle points to South Korea, where the median age is roughly, according to their calculations, in around the 35, 36 range, and the level of education is about the same as the level of education in the US. Japan is roughly the same level of education, but much older. The countries that stand out and where there are some of these generational conflicts that Mr. Lee mentioned, where the generational conflicts are really enormous, is a country like Italy, where the arrow there is. The median age is quite old, it's about 43, but the average educational level is quite low. It's on the same par as the Philippines. Those are the countries' high median age, inflexible labor markets, and low levels of education where some of the biggest intergenerational conflicts are occurring. Now, what we're expecting to happen is the labor force of the OECD countries, the rich countries, is roughly 600 million people. The world's labor force between 2010 and 2030 is going to grow by 600 million people. All that growth will be in developing countries. Okay, it will not be in the rich countries unless we open up to immigration and bring in many people from developing countries. What will those 600 million people do? Well, the projection is that in 2030, there will be shortages of skilled workers, and a skilled worker in this particular study is defined as somebody with a first university degree or more. So the first university degree makes you skilled. A low-skilled worker has less than a secondary school education. So in the US parlance, less than a high school education. So the projection is shortages of skilled workers, surpluses of low-skilled workers. But the issue is, how do you move those skilled workers into good career-type jobs? In many countries, what is happening is exactly what Mr. Lee mentioned, is young people who are getting those first university degrees are often coming into fields in which the competition to get a career-type job is enormous. If you apply for a job at Google or Apple, they get roughly 1,000 applications per job. A human being doesn't even look at those applications. It's screened by computer. The computer screens down to something like 10 or 20 people before a human ever looks at it. The competition for career-type jobs in the fields that many young people are studying is ferocious. It's enormous. In the jobs where they say we need more workers, it's often in something like manufacturing, which has shrunk enormously, but where the older workers who are still there embody a lot of skills. And the question is always, how do we bring more people to do those jobs? Well, what is likely to happen is companies will come up with ways of keeping those older workers there because the older workers have the skills, and society benefits because it costs less to provide pensions if the older workers continue working, right? These ratios between how many children and retired people have to be supported by each active worker. You can see the projection for Japan in 2050 is almost 1-to-1. And that is a very difficult thing to sustain in a pay-as-you-go pension system. Now, in theory, older workers should be working longer. And in many countries they are. New Zealand at the bottom is the star, where the official retirement age is 65, but in fact the average over the last 5 years for retirement was 67. US, Germany, even Japan is in there. But it's in those southern European countries, like in Italy or like a Greece, where you know that the unemployment rate for people under 24 is often 40 or 45%. That's where, even though, first of all, like in a place like, in some of these countries, the official retirement age is lower, but people nonetheless, instead of working longer, are actually retiring earlier. In many cases, governments and companies, in order to bring down that youth unemployment rate, instead of keeping skilled workers at work, are encouraging them to leave. So what's going to happen? Remember, there is no solution to this issue of skilled workers, sometimes in declining industries, where employers say we can't find people, and young people struggling to get career-type jobs. There's going to be a lot of individual solutions. If you have a big country, one thing you can do to encourage older people to work is to do what the pharmaceutical industry does in the US. So we have a big country. As people get older, they want to move to warmer climates. And so what this pharmacy company does is say, if you live in a cold climate and you're older, you probably own your home, and you may want to stay there with your children, but you want to leave for the winter. We will encourage you to move from a northern climate to a southern climate where it's warm, and you will have a job there. We will help you find a place to live. We will cover your transportation and give you at least a part-time job. So it's working in a warmer climate. Doesn't work for all countries, but it's the so-called snowbird program. So the birds fly south for the winter, and so do the older workers. It's a mechanism to try to fill jobs using older workers giving them an option. It doesn't cost that much, but it's a program that is being used. And so that's why when we think about how will we deal with this intergenerational conflict between young workers trying to get jobs, older workers with good jobs, if they retire, there could be skill shortages. The answer is there's going to be not one solution, but many solutions. And they will be tailored to particular circumstances. So in many complex things, don't look for just one answer. There isn't one. There are many answers. And this is an example of one answer that works in a particular area. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much. So we get some ideas how we can resolve this issue from the experience from the US. Now we had all the speakers and the discussant had discussions and the presentations. So we'd like to invite questions from the floor. But if you have questions in advance, please write down and send to me. But we'll have some interaction when the time permits. I have one question from seems like Mr. Chin Sung-hoon. He just left Samsung Electronics, and the question to Professor Fukuhara and maybe question to Dr. Lee too. Is it really possible to create jobs that can support both young and elder generations, or satisfying both generations? Because there are some differences, and as we discussed, the good jobs, full-time employment, mostly taken by the middle to senior generations, and low salary or part-time jobs are taken by the younger generation. First, you want to listen the answer by yes and no and some explanation. So let me go to Dr. Lee first, and then Professor Fukuhara. Can you make it very simple, short?
제가 말씀드린 이제 토론자로서 그 중장년층이 이제 그 정규직을 많이 차지한다라기보다 일을 하고 있고, 청년층이 비정규직이다 그러는데, 사실 이게 과거에 70년대, 80년대 저희 대학 졸업할 때는 그 신규 채용을 많이 했습니다, 기업에서. 근데 지금은 기업이 그 신규 채용을 하지 않고 대부분 경력직을 이렇게 활용하는 이런 형태. 이 부분을 제가 뭐 말로 해결한다기보다 가장 중요한 문제가 경제적인 상황이라는 생각이 듭니다. 경제가 활성화가 돼야 사람을 채용하는데, 경제가 좋지 않은 상황에서 신규 채용을 하기가 상당히 어려운 이 부분입니다. 제가 이 청년층과 그 중장년층의 일자리 문제, 상생 문제를 해결한다고 그러면 대한민국 정부에서 저를 큰 자리에 이제 일을 할 수 있도록 해줄 것도 같습니다. 사실 제가 마지막에 말씀드렸듯이 상생이라는 게 정말로 어려운 부분이라는 생각을 합니다. 그래서 참 어떻게 이게 답을 해야 될지, 사실 이게 기업하시는 분들이 기업하기 좋은 나라를 만들어서 일자리 창출이 많이 돼야 되는데, 이게 지금 상당히 어려운 부분에 봉착이 되어 있기 때문에 신규 채용을 하지 않는 문제는 어떻게 제가 답을 하기가 상당히 어려운 부분이라는 생각을 듭니다. 경제적인 상황이 가장 중요한 문제라고 이렇게 말씀을 드릴 수 있고, 뭐 그 질문에 답을 한다고 그러면 정말로 이렇게 어렵지만 이렇게 상생하는 이런 인식이 우선이 돼야 되겠다, 이렇게 말씀을 드리겠습니다.
Yeah, thank you. Professor Fukuhara, the question is whether we can create the jobs harmonious or satisfying both young and elder generations. And want to answer first by yes and no and some explanation. Thank you.
it's difficult to harmony the young people and the middle-old age people. But generally, in Japan, we can understand the two-generation problem is not different. The jobs of the young girls and the jobs of the middle class aged people is not same. Maybe in European countries in 1970s, for example, France reduced the time of the work of middle class persons, but the employment rate of the young people is not reduced. Maybe in Japan, it's we understand the same things, right?
Okay. Yes, please.
That question, it's me. Many people Korean, speaking Korean. 제 질문은 yes or no. Yes or no. Yes or no. First of all, yes, no, and then detail. Got it? 제 질문은 중장년층을 전부 다 포함한 일자리 창출이 정말 가능하냐? Yes, 가능하면 yes. 아니면 no. 그 부연 설명은 여기 이제 많은 사람들이 계시니까 나중에라도 들을 수 있으니까 그걸 좀 답을 듣고 싶다는 얘기입니다. 먼저 yes or no.
I think this kind of question is quite difficult to answer only by the yes and no, because as there was some suggestions we need some creativity to create more jobs for both young generation and elder generations. I understand what you want to get the answer as a yes and no, but maybe we can discuss later. I would like to invite some other questions from the floor. Yes.
저는 지금 여러분들의 지혜를 듣게 돼서 포럼에 참여한 의의가 있어서 너무 감사합니다. 저는 아직 그 직장 생활을 하다가 지금 잠시 쉬고 있는데요. 백승훈이라고 합니다. 저는 젊은 그 청년들의 그 취업 문제도 물론 중요하지만 은퇴 이후의 삶에 대해서 좀 미리 고민을 해보고 싶어서 이렇게 좀 와보게 됐는데요. 은퇴 이후에 그 임금이라든가 이런 것들이 계속해서 하던 일이나 직장에서 일을 해도 임금 같은 경우에는 기존보다 이제 좀 삭감되는 경우가 많이 있는 것 같은데 실질적으로 그거는 과거에는 그렇게 진행이 되는 게 맞는 걸 수도 있겠지만 이제는 점점 고령화되고 하다 보면 나이가 많으면 많을수록 아는 사람도 많아서 경조사도 더 많이 챙겨야 될 일도 있고 또 건강의 문제 때문에 의료비라든가 정작 돈이 더 들어갈 일이 많을 텐데 오히려 그래서 은퇴 이후에 그러니까 임금이라기보다는 어떤 돈이 더 많이 필요할 것으로 생각이 됩니다. 근데 실질적으로 그런 것들에 대해서는 어떻게 생각들을 하시는지 좀 궁금합니다.
어떤 분께 질문하고 싶으세요? 특별히?
특별하게 질문. 제가 성함을 못 외워서 그러니까 그 일본 분이랑 마지막 강연자 두 분께 여쭤보고 싶습니다.
Maybe this question is for Dr. Martin. After retirement, there's sometimes the employment of elderly people decrease the salary, but there might be more financial needs after retirement. So how to resolve this issue? I think that was the summary of the question. Yes, please.
Well, I don't think there's any secret as to what's going to happen. your generation is going to work more and get less than your parents' generation, because most of our social welfare states were built on growing populations and richer economies. So we had economic growth and we had populations that were growing. And so we developed, I don't know the Korean system, but except for Singapore and a few other places, we have what are called pay-as-you-go pension systems, in which people who work now pay for the benefits of retired people. And it doesn't take a lot of mathematics to understand that if the number of older people who need benefits grows and the size of the workforce shrinks, something has to give. What will happen, I think, is that older people will work longer, and that means they will pay more and get less, unless we actually do as some of the futurists say, we won't die anymore. May happen, may not. But there's going to be a squeezing down on the newer generations. I can tell you, in being in teaching for 35 years, during the late 90s, it was really easy for young graduates to get multiple job offers from good companies, from Intel and Apple. Now, people are lucky to get internships at a good company. So it's a very difficult thing. At the same time, we all look at these demographic trends, and we think that it will get easier in the future. But the change that is occurring right now, remember, part of this could be temporary. We've just had a huge recession, in which, I don't know about Korea, but in my country, the unemployment rate doubled, and the people who graduated when unemployment was 10%, they had a terrible time getting a first job. And that's kind of like a permanent scar. It always is going to stick with those people, and that will hurt their earnings. It's coming back a little bit, but many companies have changed their policies toward young people so that they're really want to hire them as temporary or through a staffing agency as opposed to hiring them in the old way. So you're living through, young people today are living through a time of change in which that entry into the labor market is temporarily bad because of the lingering effects of recession, and then we don't yet know what the structural change will be. I just noticed in the paper today that Samsung is going to move away from testing and hiring people by test and look more at skills. And I think other companies are probably going to do something very similar. So that will send a signal as to what the companies think are important. Our session focused on older workers, and where many of these skill shortages come up with older workers tend to be in older industries. I mean, look at agriculture. The average age of a farmer in the United States is something over 60. It's probably similar in Korea, because that's a shrinking industry. We still need food, but it's not a place where young people are moving into. So I don't think there is any easy answer, but it's going to be a combination of what companies do and what governments can do. And hopefully, with the economy, the global economy bouncing back, it will be easier, but I do feel very sorry for anyone who perhaps graduated in 2008 or 2009 at the bottom, because each year new people come out and they're eager to get a job, and the companies tend to look to the newest. They have the newest knowledge, and that's going to be a tricky thing for governments and people and businesses to work through.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Martin. I have several more questions, but the time is up, so I would like to wrap up the session today. I think we can learn from the different countries' cases. There's a common themes. There's an aging population increase, but skilled workforce, we need more skilled workforce. Retiring age is extending. to 65. Korea just extended to 60. And there's difficulties for the elder generation to find a job, but also for the younger generation too. I personally retired from a company last year and created a new organization called Global Talent Management Institute. This is to develop the global talents from my experience. And I don't have a conflict with the younger generation because I developed the younger generations to be a global talent. So we need more, I think, creative ideas where we can leverage the experience and skills, knowledge of the elder generation at the same time, provide more opportunities for the younger generation. There will be no one answer, but we need more creative, many options. And we need everyone's support to achieve this, from the government to the private sectors. So we'd like to complete this session, and thank you very much for your attention.
네, 수고해주신 글로벌인재 경영원 윤경련 원장님과 소중한 강연을 해주신 연사 토론자분들께 다시 한번 감사드립니다.